My friends, the phone line between the United States and Iran has now really been cut off. And it wasn't Iran that disconnected it. It was the American president who ordered his envoys to end the talks with the regime for good. After almost 6 months of conflict and a whole week of people saying a deal was close, Trump turned the tables and announced that there are no negotiations happening and none scheduled. And it's not just what he said in public, folks. Inside the White House, the strategy changed its name, and an American official described this change to the press with a word that changes the meaning of the coming months. I'll tell you what that word is in just a moment. And on the Iranian side, the response came within a few hours, and it wasn't diplomatic. The American announcement was treated as an act of war. And meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates did something that no one expected them to do. They finally did something real, and it hurts the regime more than a missile. And on the other side of the map, Israel finally spoke about what happened early yesterday morning, right? Which I covered here for you. The Prime Minister's office took responsibility for the attack in Syria in writing and pointed the finger directly at Turkey. Turkey's response came this morning and involves Netanyahu's name and the elections here in Israel that are about to start. Local time is 2:30 p.m., folks. 2:30 p.m. here in Israel. And in the end, I kept the information here. The most serious of all, what the Iranian regime has been considering doing to American targets in Europe. Not in the Middle East, in Europe, folks. Live from Israel, straight from where everything happens, organizing the chaos of information for you. Let's start here first with the American shift, because it reorganizes everything that comes after. The announcement came out in a very short note on Trump's social media. He wrote, "There is no conversation or negotiation underway nor scheduled with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The naval blockade is still in full force. The Strait of Hormuz is open and operating. All sea mines have been removed or detonated." End quote. But the note is only a small part of the story. It's the smaller part of it. According to a US government official, the president instructed his envoys to stop talking to the Iranians. It's not that the talks stalled for some other reason. The order was given to end whatever was going on maybe behind the scenes. And here comes the word I promised you at the beginning. White House finally have been explaining to political allies in the United States what the strategy will be from now on. The idea is no longer to solve this with a large and quick military operation. And now the plan is to slowly squeeze the regime until it can't breathe. The word they used inside was strangle. Do you understand? What has changed with this? No one is expecting a massive strike in 3 weeks or in a few hours, a big American attack. What's been set up is a siege that could last the whole year. And now you're probably wondering why this shift happened right now. And here, my friends, is the answer. And it has a source. The agreement that Iran has been negotiating with Oman. Remember the agreement? I've already explained this here in the live stream as well. And in yesterday's live stream, I talked about this once again. The two countries would share control over the traffic going in and out of the Persian Gulf. And today, the American press revealed how much this agreement is bothering people inside the White House. There is an assessment inside that this arrangement would tighten Iranian control over the strait instead of loosening control over the Strait of Hormuz. There are people in the American government saying that Oman acted as a partner of Iran in the negotiation and not as a neutral mediator. That explains, right, why Trump said he could go after Oman. And there is also a specific point that the Americans reject, which is the charging of fees for ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz. Some versions of the agreement include these fees under different names like environmental protection or navigational safety. In fact, regarding environmental protection, there's even a satellite image that has already shown a huge oil trail that supposedly leaked from one of those oil tankers that was hid there in the Strait of Hormuz. Something that was released, I'll try to bring this up tonight, okay? In tonight's live stream, I'll show you exactly this oil trail that they identified over there. Trump, my friends, doesn't accept any kind of toll by any name. It doesn't matter if you call it environmental protection, navigation security, security for whom, right? Against themselves. And look, what he really wants is the strait back, exactly as it was before the conflict, with no money involved, without having to pay. And that's why the threat to Oman that I told you about yesterday and the freezing of today's talks are the same decision, made just 24 hours apart. For those who don't remember, he directly threatened Oman. Remember that then? Add that to the statement. The president also published a map of the Strait of Hormuz with a stamp on it and wrote, "New territory of the United States." Trump joking around with artificial intelligence and creating this kind of little map with the United States flag on it, as if they were really going to take control of the Strait of Hormuz and now act as if it belonged to the United States, to the Americans. The map marks parts of the coast, this map he published, of the coast of Iran, Oman, and even the United Arab Emirates. White House officials said that he was just joking there, joking with AI. And I note the joke here and record the date. Okay? It's the second time in a week that he has publicly said he would take the Strait of Hormuz. A joke repeated twice by Trump stops being a joke and becomes a position. That's how you slowly introduce a narrative to the public. And the Iranian response to the map came from a place no one expected. The official account of the Iranian consulate in India replied to the American president's post by declaring California as part of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This was posted today. Mockery responding to mockery. But maybe it's not just that, right? California, for those who don't know, is where the largest Iranian community outside of Iran lives. Los Angeles receives so many people from Iran, so many people that it even got a nickname. They call that place Tehrangeles. Tehran, I think that's what they call the place. Tehrangeles. Los Angeles and Tehran, right? So when the regime's consulate points the finger at California, there's a second possible interpretation. It's not just a joke about the map. It's a message about those who speak Persian on the other side of the world. But then, my friends, the joke turns against those who made it, because most of that community in California is there precisely because they fled the regime. They are the exiles from 1979, and then their children and grandchildren. Claiming California because of the Iranians who live there is actually claiming the very people who packed their bags so they wouldn't have to live under the regime and the Ayatollahs. And now let me show you what strangling actually means in practice with numbers, okay? This new rule that may have been adopted from now on against Iran, instead of military action, through strangulation. Ship tracking required 3 crossings in the strait on the 16th in a place where before the conflict, more than 130 used to pass each day. On the Iranian side, oil exports are at 0. And the US Treasury Secretary promised that even this week, new sanctions will be announced at the toughest level so far. This is the new policy in plain English, okay? Not a single barrel leaves, not a single dollar comes in, because you need to sell the barrel for the money to come in. And nobody schedules meetings with anyone. And now I'm going to tell you what I think about this change. Prolonged strangulation is good for Israel, and I'll explain why. While the regime has no revenue, no money coming into the regime, it can't rebuild what it lost. It doesn't pay on time the militias it supports, Hezbollah, the militias in Iraq, the Houthis. These guys get money, salaries, and it doesn't finance any new kind of adventure in the region. Saudi Arabia also supports this path for their own selfish reasons. The Saudis know that an American and Israeli operation, a new operation against Iran's oil facilities, would trigger the expected response, and that their own facilities would be the first to pay the price. They would be hit by the Iranians. But there's a problem with this strategy, and it's the same as always. Pressure alone doesn't decide anything, my friends. No. There's no way to solve this like that. It just backs the other side into a corner. A cornered regime, we already know that at some point it's going to try to break the siege by force. And before I continue, hit the like button, because I know you already forgot to do that, guys. Subscribe to the channel quickly. Turn on the notification bell, because that's what will let you know when everything changes around here again. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And there's a second part of the story that almost nobody wants to talk about out loud. The siege has a devastating effect on Iran's economy, and that's where the bet lies for those who defend this strategy, believing that maintaining the siege is better than a military operation. The idea is that hunger will push the people into the streets, and that the people will overthrow the Ayatollahs from within without anyone from outside needing to intervene. Can it happen? Of course it can. It came very close to that back in January, for those who still remember, right? When the protests against the economic crisis happened, those were the January protests against the economic crisis. They were crushed by the regime's violence. But before we bet everything on that, we need to look at the rest of the world. Just a few quick examples here. North Korea has been under sanctions for decades, and the same family is still in power there. It's the people who go hungry. Cuba is under the same regime. For more than 60 years, the economy has been down the whole time, guys. The whole time. There haven't even been moments of improvement in that economy. And look at the most recent case of all, Venezuela. The president there was captured, we know that, by American forces in January, right? He will stand trial for trafficking in New York. And even so, the regime is still there. The regime hasn't changed. The vice president herself took over and the whole structure remained intact. The loyal military, the government apparatus, the court that he himself appointed. They changed a person in the seat, but not the owner of the country. Maybe it's a little different because we saw that Israel went there to help. They welcomed Israel, they made statements. Is it a little different? Absolutely. But it's the same group governing, folks. Don't be fooled. Just without Maduro. And the people, nearly a quarter of the population had already left the country. And there's one thing that every closed regime has in common. The ones who go hungry first are never the leaders, folks. It's the people. The people at the top keep eating, stay armed, and keep their fuel. And they still use the blockade as an excuse for the loyalists to tell the people that the hunger is the foreigners' fault. It's the Americans and not the fault of those who govern, folks. The one who actually pays the price for the strangulation is the Iranian mother in the breadline, not the Revolutionary Guard general. We need to make this very, very clear here. And that's why I always come back to the same point here. A blockade wears things down a lot. It will impoverish and corner the regime, but it doesn't solve the problem. Ending it is something else. And it requires another decision that for now, my friends, the reality is that the West doesn't have the courage to make that decision. And before anyone writes here in the comments that Iran isn't isolated at all, I'm going to be clear with the leftists because they need to learn too. Things definitely come in by land, and it's not a small amount. Iran borders 7 countries, has smuggling routes set up for decades, and there are trucks crossing Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Turkey every single day. But a truck can't replace a ship, Lefty. A truck is tiny, a ship is gigantic. A single oil tanker carries what hundreds of trucks can't. They just can't. And here's the part that decides everything. And I want you to really understand this calculation. To receive goods by land, someone has to pay for them. Do you agree with me? A truck doesn't cross the border for free, and nobody donates goods that way either. And the smuggler charges even more. The greater the risk, the higher the price. And where did the money to pay for all this come from? From the oil that left through the strait. Right here in this little corner here. Look, here in the Strait of Hormuz. It goes out through Hormuz. He sells the oil, the money goes back to Iran and buys goods from those other countries. Or it pays for the smuggling. Some things also leave by land, but not much goes out that way. Oil too, by truck, by small pipeline, nothing too big. But the amount doesn't even come close, not even close to what went out through the strait. That is, what went out by ship. So follow along with me, guys. The strait being closed for a long time means revenue plummeting. And plummeting revenue means less dollars in the Iranian regime's coffers. And less dollars in the coffers means less ability to buy from abroad, including buying things that would come in by land. The blockade doesn't close Iran's borders. The blockade empties the wallet that pays for what goes through them. Did you get it this time or next time? Lefty, I'm talking to you. You guys here, friends of the channel, have understood this for a long time. Hey Lefty, maybe I need to draw this out for you. I'll bring a map, a chart. Maybe that way it'll be easier for you. And that's the question, my friends, that remains for the coming months. How long can this regime hold out before trying to break the blockade by force? In other words, attack. They start the attack. And now the reaction from the other side. And here I need to be careful about what's fact and what's Iranian propaganda. The regime's first reaction was to call the announcement a declaration of war, right? Trump's announcement as a declaration of war. That's what they called it. That this statement from Trump is a declaration of war against Iran. The statement that the Strait of Hormuz belongs to Iran. That, for example, is a declaration of war to them. And the statement that there will be no more negotiations and that they will keep the blockade in place. A high-ranking official from the regime dismissed the American president, saying that he has no backbone and that his statements have no basis. And Mohsen Rezai, that veteran of the Revolutionary Guard, who has appeared here on the channel before on other topics, he made the most ambitious statement of the day. He declared the following. The gap between the United States' inability to reopen Hormuz and its claim that it controls the strait is greater than the 7,000 miles that separate the United States from the strait. Welcome to the post-American hegemony era in the Persian Gulf. End quote. Now let's see if there's any news. I'm reading here at the same time things are happening in the region. Now let's break down this sentence, folks, because I bring what the other side says. And I also bring the response, not like those biased channels that only show one side and don't even listen to the other. I bring both sides and give you the answer as well. Anyone talking about a post-American hegemony era is from a country that can't even export a single barrel of oil. Okay? According to information and satellite analysis, that Kargi Island is completely shut down. Nothing has left there for months. Pay attention, everyone. A country with its access to the sea blocked by the navy of that same American country, and with its economy crushed to the point where it can't even provide bread for its own people. Remember that the minister over there made a public statement saying they have enough stock and that they're even increasing their stock. Well, that was already a defense for what was about to happen. This isn't the speech of someone who's winning. It's the speech of someone who needs to say something grand for the home audience, for their own people, on the day the phone stopped ringing, when Trump announced, "I'm not talking to you anymore. It's over. We are not going to negotiate anymore." But the blockade continues. We need to give an answer because the population might panic, people. Panic. And there's one last piece in this story that exposes the scale of the charade. A source connected to the Iranian negotiation team said that contrary to what was presented, there was never any direct negotiation between Iran and the United States. Look at that, folks. While the whole world was discussing whether the agreement would happen this week or in the next few hours, the Iranian team itself says that the two sides never sat face to face. And here, I'll be clear with you once again. Even when it bothers the opposing side, the one I prefer and the side I support, which is the Western side. Right, folks? The United States and Israel. The American president spent months saying that the talks were progressing, that the agreement was just around the corner, that there was very little left. During this same period, Iran kept repeating that there were no negotiations at all. And I always brought both versions to you here, always, without choosing either one. On one side, the Americans saying that everything was moving forward, and on the other, the Iranians saying there were no talks at all. That's how it was, live stream after live stream. But today, the one saying there are no talks is no longer me. It's not me anymore, nor the Iranians. And it's the American president himself saying there aren't even any meetings scheduled. One of the two versions doesn't add up. And I can only see two explanations for this. Possible explanations. Either he got tired of this dance and decided to stop announcing in public what he was doing behind the scenes, which also makes sense for someone who's changing strategy, or Iran was telling the truth all along. And what actually existed was much less than what Trump sold to the world. I have no way of knowing which one is true, and neither do you. But I'm not going to pretend to you that this contradiction doesn't exist. Okay? If this live stream is helping you understand what the headlines don't tell you, leave a like now, folks, right now. Because there is still time to leave a like, turn on notification bell, and check if your subscription is still active here on the channel. Because from time to time, YouTube starts removing these subscriptions. I don't know why, folks. There are people who subscribe too. I saw the video you sent on Instagram, you tried to subscribe. Try clicking the button there, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work, it doesn't work. I don't know why this happens. Well, boycott? System failure? Maybe. Now let's go to the Emirates, because that's where the day started. Last night, I told you that the Emirates had detected a missile threat. Nobody knew from where, right, it had come from. And the answer came during the live stream itself, folks. For those who stayed until the end, I brought the answer. In an official statement from the United Arab Emirates, they declared the following, that 2 ballistic missiles were fired from Iran towards the country and fell into the water. It wasn't the Houthis as people thought. It didn't come from Yemen. It came from Iran itself. And the Iranian foreign ministry denied everything this morning, saying that Iran didn't fire any missiles at the Emirates. They shoot and deny, as we already know. That's always been the Iranian method. But this time, the response didn't come in the form of a diplomatic protest. A few hours later, the Emirates announced the suspension of all commercial activities. All commercial activity and all financial transactions with Iran, until further notice. And this, my friends, for you to understand, it hurts the regime much more than the missile they fired. Pay attention. A 30-second lesson. Because without it, this news would go unnoticed, right? As if none of it mattered. The Emirates were Iran's economic lifeline. I don't know how this lasted until now. This should have been done much earlier. But it was over there, folks. That's where the Iranians carried out large-scale financial transactions, including, in the words, of digital currencies, of cryptocurrencies, precisely to get around the sanctions. They used cryptocurrencies, shell companies, third-party accounts, triangulated trade. All of this went through there in the United Arab Emirates, closing that door and squeezing the regime by the throat in a place where the American Navy can't reach. And here, I can't leave a wrong impression. The Emirates were not out of this conflict, not even close, folks. Abu Dhabi's state oil company has already had 16 ships hit. 16 ships hit by missiles and drones since the beginning of the conflict, with 1 crew member killed and 20 injured, at least officially. The United Arab Emirates themselves publicly called this piracy by the Revolutionary Guard. What had stopped was something else. Missiles falling inside their territory. That had stopped. The last record of this kind was in May. That's why the alert that happened yesterday, right, mattered so much. A missile fell outside the territorial waters of the Emirates, and another one fell inside. After 3 months, Iranian fire once again targeted the territory of the Emirates, and not just the ships that leave from there. And this time they didn't stop at protesting. The Emirates went straight for it. They stopped calling it piracy and hit Iran right in the wallet. But the Iranian response already showed up today at sea. Okay, according to today's maritime tracking, it showed a tanker managed by the United Arab Emirates changing course in the last few hours and being taken toward the port of Bandar Abbas in Iran. I tried to locate it here in this region. It would be around here. It would have been taken to the port of Bandar Abbas. Right here. Look. This oil tanker belongs to the United Arab Emirates. So everything indicates that the Revolutionary Guard took this ship, hijacked the ship. Whoever loses the money takes the ship, right? They try another way to make money or force the United Arab Emirates to release or change their mind about holding their money there. That's how this regime negotiates. And there was another chapter of isolation, this one in Europe. France expelled 2 Iranian diplomats from French territory because of the detention of 2 French diplomats in Iran in July. Does anyone remember that? They arrested them over there. So now France expelled 2 diplomats. Iran also responded today, expelling 2 more French diplomats. Eye for an eye in diplomacy. And another door closes for the regime. Put all that together and you have a picture of the day. Phone lines cut, trade cut off with the Emirates, and diplomats being expelled in Europe. The siege isn't just naval and it's not just American. In 4 hours, the regime lost the phone, lost the bank, which was the United Arab Emirates, and lost the embassy. That's the situation on the eastern side of the map. And it stays like that for now. And I'll come back to this topic as soon as there's an update. And if anything new comes up, I'll cover it in today's next live stream. Because now I need to take you to the north, to another front, to where something happened. Where something happened. Something that almost never happens, folks. I'll put the map here. I think the map is here. This little map here of Syria, folks. Of Syria. And Israel admitted it. 20 hours after the attack in Syria, and after an entire day of official silence, the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu released a written statement. And his statement was very short, direct, and addressed to the right people, folks. It says the following: Israel and Syria agreed to maintain the status quo on security matters. And Syria was about to violate this understanding by allowing Turkish troops to set up at an airbase near Aleppo. Israel repeatedly warned Syria that this installation would represent a threat to Israel's security, and Syria chose to ignore these warnings. Israel will not tolerate threats to its security and would welcome a return to the status quo. The status quo, folks, for those who don't use this expression every day, means leaving things as they are. Today, don't make changes to what's normal, right? To what has always been. That's the status quo. And what the 2 countries agreed on was to leave the security situation exactly as it was. No new troops in the region, no troops from Turkey, from any country, no new bases being built. No military developments from either side. It seems that Turkey had moved high precision radars there, very important radars. Those were the radars that were destroyed there. And now I need to explain here why this statement is so unusual. The rule here, at least for the past 20 years, is not to confirm or deny operations in Syria. Just yesterday, Israeli sources even told the press that Israel had no involvement at all. I brought this here for you. When the Prime Minister's office acknowledges it in writing, it's no longer just informing the public. He is sending a message with a sender and a recipient, and the recipient is not Syria. The entire statement revolves around just one thing: Turkish troops at an airbase near Aleppo. Israel made it clear the next day that a Turkish military airbase inside Syria is a red line. This will never happen again. And the American press confirmed the same thing through another channel. Israeli sources informed the Americans that the attack was meant to prevent a Turkish military buildup in that area. And now why admit to this? Right now, after 20 hours of silence. And this is my take, folks. While no one takes responsibility, when no one admits to anything, each country tells the story however they want. Isn't that right? Everyone is denying it. And the story that went around the whole world since dawn was about Syrian sovereignty, violated for no reason. That Israel went there and attacked, right? With no apparent reason. They went there and destroyed what shouldn't have been destroyed. They invaded, right? Violated sovereignty. And by admitting this in writing, Israel took it out of the realm of rumor and put it in the realm of justification. There is a security understanding between Israel and Syria. That's a fact. It was about to be broken. There was a warning, and the warning was ignored by the Syrian side. And there's a second reason, which is always the most important, which is always the most important of all. A message without a sender doesn't work as a warning. Do you agree with me? If the idea was to make it clear that this couldn't or can't happen again, someone needs to put their name on it. If not, the other side, the Turkish side, pretends it didn't understand and tries again next week. And now the other side, which I always make a point to bring up. A Turkish official denied that Turkey is seeking to establish a military presence at that base. That's not true, right, folks? We know that's not true. And here comes the most tense statement of the day, which came from the American envoy. The American envoy there in Turkey told the news agency that Turkey did not receive any prior warning about the attack, as if Israel had to notify Turkey that it was going to attack a Turkish target. That the Turks detected the planes flying north towards Turkish territory, and because of that, they could have reasonably prepared their own military response. The phrase he used to close was this: fortunately, common sense prevented the situation from getting even worse. In other words, if the Turks had reacted when they saw the Israeli fighter jets approaching, if they had reacted, we would be in another war today, probably. And now listen to what's inside this statement from this American envoy. He's saying in public that Turkey could have sent its own fighter jets into the air in response to Israeli planes. That's why. That's why he announced right after that the United States is working. He announced this today to set up a mechanism to prevent friction between Israel, Syria, and Turkey. Translating what that means: a channel, a technical channel that will be set up somewhere, some command center, so that both sides can notify each other in advance and don't meet in the air by accident. Do you really think that's going to work? That Israel is going to notify Turkey that is going to destroy a Turkish target inside Syria? That doesn't exist, people. And the simple fact of being here, at least trying to set up this channel, already answers the question I left open yesterday about a future confrontation between Israel and Turkey. Turkey is no longer a behind the scenes issue. My friends, it's no longer just a behind the scenes issue. Okay, it's becoming a central topic. It's now a spot on the map that needs a direct line so it doesn't turn into an open confrontation. And the official response from Turkey came in the last few hours, and it also deserves to be listened to carefully. Erdogan's cabinet declared that the allegations from Netanyahu's cabinet have no basis whatsoever, and that they only serve to justify illegal airstrikes that violate Syria's sovereignty. He keeps insisting on Syria's sovereignty. And then came the part that's of interest. According to the Turkish statement, these accusations stem from Netanyahu's desire to continue a policy that destabilizes the region on the eve of the elections in Israel. And he ended the statement by saying the following: Turkey will continue firmly with its legitimate cooperation with the Syrian government, aiming to promote peace, stability, and prosperity in the country, and will never allow its stability to be shaken. To me, that's a threat, right? Never going to allow it. Look at the structure of this Turkish response. First, he denies the military presence, and then he discredits those who accuse, attributing everything to Netanyahu's electoral calculations. And in the end, in the last line, he confirms exactly what he denied at the beginning of the statement, that he will continue cooperation with the Syrian government and will not allow anyone to interfere. Deny the project and promise to continue the project in the same statement. There are people who read a statement like this and can't understand it. But he's doing the same thing in the same statement. It's a choice. This was a choice. It's classic of them to do this, and in my view, it's the choice of someone who doesn't intend to stop, but just doesn't want the issue to have a name yet. In other words, let's keep it behind the scenes. As for the claim that this was about the election, right? That says the attack happened because of the elections here. Look, there is an election scheduled in Israel, and it's natural that any security decision is also seen through that lens. Okay, that's natural. Politicians act that way. But the election date won't change the map. Do you agree with me? A Turkish air base near Aleppo would be a problem for Israel. Imagine a base in that region. Guys, that's a problem for Israel, okay? With or without an election. And it doesn't matter who the prime minister is sitting in that chair here in Israel. It doesn't matter who it is, it's a problem. For Israel, at any time, at any stage, whether it's in 10, 20, or 5 years, it doesn't matter, guys. And look at this. This here is the information you need to understand. It doesn't matter who will be the prime minister from now on. This decision wasn't political because of the elections, right? What would change in the elections because of this Israeli attack in Turkey? Nothing changes. And now, let me give you the information I held back at the beginning of this live. It came out in the newspaper here, the Financial Times, and it's the kind of news that changes the scale of what we're discussing here. According to people close to the Iranian regime, pay close attention to this news because it is extremely important. Iran has examined the possibility or is examining the possibility of targeting American targets in southeastern Europe in case the United States escalates the conflict. Among the targets being considered are American assets in Bulgaria and Cyprus. Are you listening carefully, my friends? Bulgaria and Cyprus. We're talking about European territory here. Cyprus is very close, less than 400 kilometers from the coast of Israel. And Bulgaria is a member of the European Union and NATO. And the same report mentions a second target that almost no one understood, which is the fiber optic submarine cables that pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz. A very quick lesson for you here because this is serious. It's more serious than it seems. Those cables at the bottom of the sea that carry internet traffic in this region and financial transactions across the entire area, guys. Cutting cables doesn't kill anyone. It doesn't show up in photos and it's hard to prove who did it. It's very difficult. And Iran has this capability, okay? Don't be fooled. They have the ability to do this. But taking down a bank, taking down the stock market, taking down company and government communications, it all goes down at the same time. As the cut, it goes down. Will they be able to get it back through other alternative lines? Probably. But at the moment of the cut, it will cause great damage. And the damage crosses the border without asking for permission. It's the kind of blow that a cornered regime chooses because it's cheap and deniable. They can say it wasn't them, it just naturally got disconnected, right? It broke, it snapped, a shark ate the cable, something like that. It hurts the enemy's economy without crossing the line that would trigger a full military response in the region. And the Arab press pointed in the same direction today. Iranian sources stated that the regime is considering targeting American military sites in Europe if the American president decides to escalate this war. And I need to make it very clear here that this is a study reported by Arab sources. It's not an order given by anyone and it's not an ongoing Iranian operation against Europe at this exact moment. These are plans identifying targets and laying out the next step. But when the regime under siege starts picking targets outside its own backyard, that says something very clear about what it's really feeling inside. You're not going to look for targets in Bulgaria or Cyprus if things are going well for you in Hormuz, right? So you regime shill. What do you say about this? Do you see the regime you're defending? The regime you swear is a victim that only wants peace, that only reacts to imperialism, is picking targets in Europe and considering cutting off the internet for half the region here in the Middle East. I didn't make this up. It's published with sources in one of the biggest and most respected newspapers in the world. And I'll finish here with our Hebrew word of the day. 32 minutes of live stream, local time, 2:35 p.m. If you missed the beginning of this live, guys, go back to the start, watch it from the beginning, because I promise you, you'll leave here knowing everything that's happening in the Middle East in a single video. Increase the speed to 1.5. Run it really quickly and you'll be able to listen to everything in half the time. If you can't handle it that fast, set it to 1.25. Okay? I'll finish here with our Hebrew word. And our Hebrew word today is renek. Renek. That's how you say it. Renek. Renek means strangulation, suffocation, or it can mean a grip on the neck. Okay? And count with me how many hands squeezed that same neck today. The American Navy in the ports of Iran, right there in the ports of Iran, the Emirates on the financial front, and France on the diplomatic front. And whoever is being squeezed like this has two options. They are being squeezed, but they have two options. Either they sit at the table and sign now, or they attack someone somewhere to try to ease the pressure on their own neck. And the documents that showed up today already show the regime looking for that someone and already choosing that place, right? The next target. And I'm still here straight from the Judean mountains, folks, putting together the pieces of this puzzle one by one in a way the mainstream media doesn't do for you. Again, I ask you, subscribe here, turn on the notification bell, and share this analysis in your family group, in the leftist group, because you probably have a Mortadella group. And folks, for those who aren't getting YouTube notifications, that's just how it is. YouTube does this with all channels. That's why I created a channel on WhatsApp. The channel's QR code is pinned here, right on this screen. See it there on the right side? On the left side here, look. On this side here, look. Down there, see it? There's a QR code. You scan this QR code with your phone and you become part of the WhatsApp channel here. In other words, you won't depend on YouTube anymore. You won't depend on YouTube notifications. Whether YouTube sends it to you or not, you'll be notified by me. I'm not going to sell you anything there. I won't invade your phone. I won't sell you absolutely anything. I'll just send the link to each video I make. And before I start the live, so you can follow in real time and even know the order of the lives, right? What was yesterday, what was the day before, and you won't get lost in just any random live out there. The best thing is these WhatsApp channels where we stay in direct contact. Later, if this channel also gets taken down, we'll still stay in direct contact through these channels. So I advise you to scan this QR code here. I'll also pin it after the video. After the video, I'll pin the link to this WhatsApp channel in the first comment here. So if you're watching on TV, open this video on your phone so you can access the first comment and join this channel. During election season, YouTube gets even worse when it comes to reach. YouTube gets worse because it works with trends. What's going on right now? What is the world interested in today? It's going to push your content forward. Whatever is interesting to the world, it's going to push that video forward. But we can work independently of YouTube with a closed community inside a WhatsApp channel. So you don't depend on the algorithm. You don't depend on YouTube's reach. You just need to open WhatsApp, see what the latest video is, and decide if you're interested in watching it. That's it. Don't depend, guys. I'm saying this in general. Don't depend on the YouTube algorithm because it's manipulated so you see what they want you to watch. That's how it works. If now they want to manipulate the election somewhere in the world, that can happen, guys. That can happen. You'll end up seeing more videos from a certain person. This will happen on all social networks, so don't depend on that. Go to our WhatsApp channel. Hugs to all the friends in Israel and see you on the next live stream.